Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another video. This video is going to be about Malcolm and Marie. But before we really dive into it, I do want to shout out the really cool stuff we're doing for patrons and members. If you're a patron or a member, you know that in the month of January, we had a series of events and they were so good. And we brought in guest speakers and we had conversations and we got to know each other. It was amazing. And I'm definitely going to continue that for the rest of the year because I just like talking to y'all. The next event is going to be on February 19th. We're going to be discussing the complexities of Black female friendship. It's free if you're a patron or a member. It's $4 if you're not, but I don't know why you would pay the $4 when it's only $2 to sign up to become a patron. Just makes more sense that way, but whatever. And then after that, we're gonna have a conversation about Black women and infertility. I'm bringing in a specialist so we can have another really just honest, vulnerable conversation about that and maybe get some questions answered. Y'all know I don't want to have no kids, but I know a lot of y'all do, and I am deeply empathetic to the struggles that so many Black women are facing in, trying to conceive and thinking about conceiving, and you don't have a man, so are you gonna have a baby? And maybe you're not straight, so how are you gonna have a baby? We'll dive into that. I also want to shout out the merch shelf. Under this video, you will see a carousel of For Harriet merch. I see y'all on social media wearing the merch, tagging me, tagging the For Harriet Instagram. I appreciate y'all so much. So if you are interested in buying a Read More Bell Hooks shirt or a Black Women Aren't Here to Save You shirt or something with my face on it, I don't know, people do buy that stuff. You can buy it there. I just wanted to point that out because I feel like I've never shouted that out before. Lastly, I did make a little video about how I made this video. I made a behind the scenes, and that is now up for the patrons and the members. So if you want to know how this stuff gets made, become a patron or become a member. That's it. All right, let's get to it. I'm just going to start out with my thesis. I do not think that this movie is as bad as so many people are saying it is. In fact, I'm perplexed by some of these reviews, but it's not a good movie and it's trying really, really hard to be a great movie. And the fact that you can feel it trying so hard makes the process of watching the movie really embarrassing and painful. And that is really what I felt while watching Malcolm and Marie. And that's unfortunate because there were a lot of unforced errors all throughout this film. And I gotta say, I like Zendaya. I think she's a good actress. I like her in Euphoria. I like her as a person. If you watch her speak or read some of those interviews, I like Zendaya. And I also like that she used her power to make sure that everybody who worked on this production got paid on the back end, which, by the way, is where the real money is. I like that she even has the power as a young woman to get this film made. I like that she won that Emmy for Euphoria. But this was not it. This film is undercooked. However, and this is where I'm gonna make it spicy, a lot of the criticisms that I've seen of this film are equally half-baked, equally ridiculous. So let's dive in. Malcolm and Marie was written and directed by Sam Levinson. He's the man who gave us Euphoria, and he's really good friends with Zendaya. So Zendaya called him up one day and said, write a movie for me and let's film it in my house. And Sam came up with some ideas and he would call Zendaya with the ideas and she'd be like, I don't like that. And then finally he called her up with this idea and she said, yes, I like that. So he started writing the script, and as he was writing the script, Zendaya says he would call her all along the way and she would give him feedback, and that's how they kind of collaborated, though he is the only named writer. And then while he was writing, he said, you know who should star with in this with Zendaya? John David Washington. And then he called up John David Washington and acted out the first 10 pages of the script. And John David Washington said, oh, this sounds good. Let's make it. And a movie was born, and both Zendaya and John David Washington are producers on the film. And that is a really big deal. They had a lot of control. There's a lot of collaboration from the stars and Sam Levinson. The film was shot in June 2020. It reportedly sold for $30 million to Netflix, which is a really good thing because we know everybody who even worked on this film got points on the back end. That means a lot of people made a lot of money, so good for them. Again, that model is great, and that's why I like Zendaya, because we need more of that. All right, what's it about? Malcolm and Marie follows Malcolm and Marie. They are lovers, boyfriend and girlfriend. They live together. Malcolm is an up-and-coming film director. This is the night of his film premiere, and he is on a high. He's positively exuberant. He's dancing around because he did it. He's made the best film he's ever made, and he's getting, so far, really rave reviews. But while Malcolm is happy and dancing all around, Marie is stewing. She is upset because he forgot to thank her in his remarks that night. And then they argue for an hour and 40 minutes. That's it. That's what this movie is. It's an argument in many parts. First, let's talk about some positivity. I want to exalt the technical aspects of this film. The cinematographer, Marcel Rev, did a stunning job. There are so many shots in this film that are just gorgeous images. Even the way the camera moves, there is that opening scene where John David Washington, who plays Malcolm, is just dancing and going all across the house. Camera movement is stunning. And the way that Zendaya and John David Washington, who are not hard to look at anyway, how beautiful they looked in that black and white, gorgeous. Amazing. The camera movement and choreography added visual interest to a script that to me was just pretty dull. Like, there is a scene where Malcolm and Marie are arguing in the kitchen again. The whole film is an argument, and they are chasing each other around the island. They're going in circles around that island in an argument that is also circular.
Why is that?
Trust me, you don't.
Why is that?
Because even if you do, you're not thinking clearly.
I think I'm thinking clearly.
Trust me, you're not.
That kind of attention to detail is just chef's kiss to me. So good. That's what I appreciate. I also appreciate that in the script, Marie is given equal time. That is rare, okay? Women, even in movies that they are supposed to star in, are often given short shrift. So I love that Zendaya got a lot of space to shine. And you know what? I like Zendaya as an actress. I think she did the best work that she could do here. There were a couple of times when I was watching this film where I was like, she's in her bag.
They think you know what it's like to scrap. Think you fucking lived it. Give me a break. You're more privileged than the white girl who worked for the LA Times who thinks she's doing a public service by lifting up your mediocre ass. That's why you can forget to thank me in your speech. Because you're not afraid that I'm gonna come home and go, you know what, you lost me tonight. Fuck this shit, I am out. I would have been better. Because I experienced it. I lived it. And not only would I have been better, I would have made your film better.
She did a lot to elevate those really clunky blocks of text that fill this script. I really feel like she elevated it often, and I get why people would bristle at seeing dark-skinned man with light-skinned woman. That's just so common, but in the context of this film, it makes perfect sense. That is the kind of partner that somebody like Malcolm would have. But I do have one small quibble, just one little thing. You know how we say Kerry Washington acts through her teeth? I don't know if we say that, but I say that. Anyways, Kerry Washington does do a lot of teeth acting. Zendaya does a lot of chin acting. That chin quiver, I think we're relying a little bit too much on it. It was a little bit distracting, but I mean, in the context of this film, I guess I get it. But that's my only thing. I think she's really good. Maybe not the best she could be here, but really good. On a lusty note, John David Washington is a man. A fine man. The apple does not fall far, okay? Okay. And also shout out to that house. It's a house called Caterpillar House in Carmel, California. Just gorgeous. Just rich people living lavishly. That modernist architecture is so beautiful. And the interior of the house was designed gorgeously. That was basically the third character of this film. And finally, on the positivity note, I loved the use of music in this film. I love that they were speaking to each other in song with the James Brown and the Dionne Warwick and the William Bell and that instrumental jazz, that score by Labyrinth. Loved it. That music did as much as it could to add some soul to this movie, and I really appreciated it. All right, that was nice, but now we have to get real because this film does have some real issues, the biggest of which is the script. It all takes place in a single setting in real time, and it's just them arguing. There is no plot. I've seen Sam Levinson describe this as a Socratic dialogue where sometimes they go back and forth really quickly and then they each have their opportunities to have long monologues or soliloquies. And in order for this to really work, the script would have had to been airtight and the acting would have had to been just top notch. And neither of those things really happened. So it's not compelling. There are many times where I was like, why is this not over? For an hour and 40 something minutes, Malcolm and Marie go back and forth about their very toxic relationship. And when they're not talking about their toxic relationship, they're talking about the expectations of artists and the limits of contemporary media criticism. And often it's just slow. And I get what Levinson is going for because I like these kinds of movies. I like an art house movie. I like an intimate, slow burn. And you know, Barry Jenkins, his name was invoked a couple of times in the script. And Barry Jenkins made Moonlight and he made If Beale Street Could Talk. And I just feel like he is the exemplar of like filmmaking excellence right now. And his movies are filled with beautiful moments, both emotionally and visually. And there are lots of beautiful visual moments in this film, but just emotionally, it often fell flat. And ultimately, there just was not enough payoff. After having sat through these people arguing for an hour and 40 something minutes, I didn't walk away from the film being like, that was time well spent. At the end of Malcolm and Marie, I did not feel satisfied. And that's not to say that I wanted to feel happy. I don't need a happy ending where everybody magically comes together. No, the ending felt so tentative. And yes, I understand that life is tentative, but it didn't work for me. But also, just to dig a little bit deeper, the writing of the script was so heavy-handed. It was so clunky. There were times, okay, let's take, for example, that argument scene where Malcolm is eating the mac and cheese and Marie is in the hallway and they're yelling back and forth at each other. Some of that dialogue made me wince. It was so uncomfortable. And you can see Zendaya, just bless her little heart. She was trying so hard to get her mouth around those words. It did not work. There were times when that quick fire dialogue, which is supposed to mimic the natural fast paced rhythms of an argument, it just felt so choppy. It felt like those TikToks where the text is overlaid with each other. And there were really good moments in the script, especially in those monologues, but they were drawn out for so long. It was like Sam Levinson was writing a term paper and he was given a minimum word count and he was just stretching it out so he could reach that minimum word count. Just too long. And I'm a Shakespeare fan, okay? I'm an Arthur Miller fan. I'm a Tennessee Williams fan, okay? So if I'm saying this, it was too long. And this film reminded me frequently of cinematic versions of plays. We're gonna talk about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf later, but Levinson is no Arthur Miller. He's no Tennessee Williams, and I don't expect him to be. I just needed a little bit more. And we can see the actors trying so hard to make this work. But one of the reasons why they had to try so hard to make this work is also because these were not the best actors for these parts. This film was severely miscast, and that's a huge deal when there's only 2 people in the movie. And even now, I'm still not 100% sure if I wouldn't have liked this movie better if I felt like there were more appropriate actors in this role. Before I saw the movie, I was a little bit upset to see the age gap between Zendaya and John David Washington. I think it's 12 or 13 years. And that kind of upset me because there's just always this huge age gap between men and women in film. And I thought, oh, like this is sexism or whatever. In the context of this film, that age gap makes perfect sense. My bad, I shouldn't have been talking shit before I saw the movie. That is not the issue. The issue is much deeper. Again, I like Zendaya. She's a good actress. She tried really hard. But often while I was watching her try really hard in this movie, I thought, this girl is not Marie. It's not appropriate. Zendaya just does not give me womanly vibes. And I hate to say that because it's like, is it her face? Is it her body? Because she can't change those things. But there's something about Marie that I just want to be just a little gruffer. You know, Zendaya often gives me adolescent. She does give me Rue from Euphoria, and I just needed somebody just a little bit more lived in. And when I was watching this movie and I would see John David Washington next to Zendaya, I would be like, it looks like he's babysitting her. And it's awkward, it looks uncomfortable. And that also contributes to the film feeling extra abusive, extra exploitive. It was just awkward. But they had no chemistry, no passion, no spark. In a film about 2 people and their relationship, if you don't believe the relationship, you don't believe the film. So I'm watching this movie like, what even drew y'all to each other? I know toxic relationships, I've been in them, I've seen them. Often you'll see people together and you'll be like, this is not gonna work, like y'all need to separate, but I bet y'all are having great sex. I do not feel that when I was watching this movie. Now, there were a couple of intimate moments between them that I did like after that mac and cheese argument where they get close and Marie says, don't push away the people who ground you and I'm the only one who's gonna call you on your shit. I really liked that. Just love. That was like the hint of chemistry, like a teeny tiny little spark, almost, not quite. But I will say, the thing that really stopped me from getting all the way into this movie, like acting wise, chemistry wise, was John David Washington. I did not like the choices that he made at all. The lack of dynamism in his performance, where it was yelling for most of the movie. And I get, right? Narcissists yell. Donald Trump yells, like that's it. But it was just so wild. It was yelling. It was wild gesticulations. It was punching the air. And it was just like, it's a lot. And I think that you can convey that kind of egotism, that kind of narcissism, while inserting some dynamics, giving us highs and lows, switching up the tempo and the timbre and the volume. It was so one note for me. There's a difference between being expressive and being cartoonish. And I just felt like this was just a cartoon character. And even when he tried to bring it down, when he tried to pull it back, it still just felt, it didn't quite hit the note for me.
Get the entire fuck out of here. You're not the first broken girl I've known, fucked, or dated. I wrote my first script in a one-bedroom apartment with Leah, who I thought loved hour-long showers until I found her passed out with a fucking needle in her arm.
But even those monologues, those long monologues where he's going off on the film critic or on Marie or whatever, it was all yelling.
Identities are constantly shifting. Does the male gaze exist if the filmmaker's gay and not straight? And to what degree? I mean, what if they're asexual? What if they're transitioning and you don't even know it?
I would prefer a whispered monologue to a yelled monologue, because listening to somebody yell for 6 minutes is tiring. And again, Shakespeare fan. And you know, one of my notes while watching this film is watching John David Washington is like watching a fine man do a Denzel Washington impression. And Denzel Washington at the end of Training Day at that.
Jay! You think you can do this to me? You motherfuckers will be playing basketball in Pelican Bay when I get finished with you.
And that's what this felt like super fine man, high cheekbones, beautiful skin, Denzel impression. That was it for me. All right, to recap, bad chemistry, bad casting, unwieldy dialogue, but also another thing that makes this movie so difficult to watch and to stomach often is because this movie is supposed to be about two lovers sparring, giving it to each other, really digging into each other's psyches, but it often was just about abuse. It was about one person, Malcolm, belittling and beating down the other person, Marie. Now, what is the difference between an argument and abuse? I don't know, but I know it when I see it. And I know that Malcolm chasing Marie from room to room is abusive. I know that him belittling her and bringing up her history of addiction and codependency is just toxicity, right? And there's fun toxic. I like fun toxic. And then there's this, not fun. While she's coming at his overinflated ego, he's coming at her humanity. And Marie really tries, but she's just not in a position to give it as good as she gets it. And even the scenes that are trying to humanize Malcolm, to bring some vulnerability to the character, just underscore those really abusive dynamics. There's a scene where Malcolm is basically at Marie's feet. He's in her lap and he's going over all of the ways that he supported her over the years.
When we lived on 38th Street and you went out to that meeting, right? You went to the meeting and you didn't come home because you were fucking somebody else, right? Guess who was there for you? This nigga right here.
And he's detailing their history. And in my mind, I'm like, now, what is a grown-ass man doing chasing after a 20-year-old recovering addict? Something about that ain't right. And then we learn that he has a history of this, a history of being with women who are addicts, of women who are at their most vulnerable state. And I'm like, okay, this man is a predator. Now, that stuff wouldn't necessarily have bothered me as much if I'd liked other stuff about the movie, but you know, it just made me raise an eyebrow. All right, now we need to talk about the controversies. Malcolm is a typical narcissistic artist. As I mentioned before, he goes on these long monologues about how critics receive his work. He questions the invocation of identity. He questions how people approach his work as a Black artist.
It's a film about a girl trying to get clean. Now, there's certain obstacles because she's a Black woman. I mean, hell yeah. Right? I mean, that's reality too, but it's not a film about race.
He doesn't like how a white woman film critic talks about the sexism in his film, even though she praises the work overall. Now, a lot of people who review movies really did not like that conversation about film criticism and focused on that in a way that I find to be nonsensical, because one, the whole point of that is to underscore Malcolm's egotism, and that's made clear, and two, Malcolm is not all the way wrong. Malcolm's narcissism almost takes down his art. It almost destroys his relationship. And we see while he's going off on these long tirades, Marie is there every step of the way undercutting him, telling him that he's being ridiculous. But he's so self-obsessed, he doesn't even read Marie's body language. He doesn't recognize that she's making fun of him.
So many of these journalists can't help but to flex their college education.
Malcolm, you have a college education.
Yeah, but I'm not academic, baby. I'm not elitist about my shit. I'm not trying to make a film for the 3 people in my media studies class that I respect.
He doesn't see that as he's going off on how critics are so privileged and disconnected, Marie is laughing at him saying, hey, don't forget, you're a privileged whiny baby too. He's not realer than his critics. And you know, Marie also has some really good lines in there about how Malcolm doesn't want to be viewed a certain way as a Black artist, how he doesn't want his art to be viewed politically, but he's working on an Angela Davis biopic. She also talks about how artists don't want to be held up to a certain political standard, but they go out and use their platforms to say political stuff. Like, those are really interesting, valid thoughts.
Okay, you are a filmmaker, and filmmaking is the most capitalistic, mainstream fucking art form on the planet Earth. No matter how many times Taylor told you news that she was a fucking communist.
And this is why when I see people extract certain lines from Malcolm's monologues and be like, look at what Levinson is saying and how dare he have a Black man say this, I'm like, why are y'all extracting those lines from their context? The context is really important here. The context is Malcolm looks nuts while he's saying this. He looks ridiculous, and Marie calls him on it. Marie says, my problem with you as a filmmaker is my problem with you as a human being. Ooh. That's a bar. Basically telling him you are stunted as a person and as an artist because you refuse to engage deeply with feedback. That is the point. So when people are like, how dare Levinson use a Black man to air his grievances? I'm like, but he also used a Black woman to counter those grievances, to call them out as being ridiculous and self-serving. Both sides of this argument are coming out of Levinson's brain. So why are we not acknowledging Marie's role here? I don't understand that. But also, I even take issue with this thing about how dare he speak through his characters. Isn't that what film is? I saw a critic in The Guardian say, this is exploitation. What? Are you familiar with film? Right? Like, yeah, writers speak through their characters. And why do Malcolm's words matter more than Marie's when Marie has the best written and acted monologue in the entire film where she eviscerates Malcolm?
The man I'm looking at right now is as good as he's gonna get. You yelling at me in a bathtub about how you're gonna snap me like a twig is the best and worst of who you will be in this relationship.
Ignoring that much of Marie's dialogue is a choice, and it's a choice that lends some credence to some of the things that Malcolm is saying. We basically end on Marie with the whole film basically saying, she's right, she's right. Furthermore, Malcolm as a human, trash, delivery, horrible, but all of the questions that he's asking are not bad questions. I've heard Levinson say in an interview something to the effect of, sometimes it feels like critics are more interested in reading the culture than reading the art. And I can say, as somebody who does this, that there are lots of incentives for people who do commentary and criticisms to pander to cultural mores, which are constantly evolving and shifting, rather than digging deep into the art making. And when you are first and foremost trying to read the culture, which is necessarily ephemeral, your interpretation of work is going to be parochial. It's going to be very narrow. And I see that all the time. I don't have a problem with that being called out in the way that it's called out here. If you feel called out by the claim that criticism is pedantic, which it is, you probably should feel called out. I felt called out. Yes, that is me with the big words and the Ivy League degree and the sweeping social analysis. I also acknowledge that talking so much about messages and identities and not aesthetics can put Black filmmakers in a box. And so many Black artists have said this, so I don't see the issue. What really is the issue here? And not to mention that the Black artists in this movie feel the same way. John David Washington said in an interview with The Ringer that he feels the same way Malcolm does and he jumped at an opportunity to portray it. Zendaya said the same thing in her GQ interview. She said, those conversations are definitely conversations that Sam and I have had, because a lot of it was inspired by feelings of limitation for Black creatives that are not put on other people, and what that looks like and what that feels like as a creative when you want to just make art. Kenya Barris also wrestles with this in the very best episodes of Black AF, another show I didn't hate nearly as much as everybody else did. But okay, you don't want a white man writing it and getting credit for it, fine. I just feel like there's other stuff going on here, and something we really have to be honest about is critics can be just as myopic and egotistical as the artists they critique. And that is where the Malcolm and Marie discourse reaches an impasse. And to be completely real, critics have to right-size in our minds our place in the culture, because it is much easier to watch a film and pontificate on it than it is to actually make a film. Everybody knows that. And I say this as somebody who loves to watch and pontificate. And not only that, and this is gonna be a bit of an aside, but stay with me here, it's gonna pay off. I think we need to be questioning the posture from which we approach entertainment. We need to think deeply about the amount of joy we take in deconstruction, the pleasure we find in tearing things down. Bell Hooks talks about this in Black Looks, about the joy found in looking critically. But how useful is it? How productive is that? I had a really good conversation recently with a friend who is a scholar about how academia primarily teaches deconstruction. And then that seeps over into criticism. So most cultural critics primarily traffic in deconstruction. And then that seeps into the culture. And even people who don't deeply engage with formal criticism, they only know how to engage art via deconstruction. But is that good for art? Is it good for artists? Levinson isn't saying this here, this is just me thinking. And when deconstruction is the norm, when the default is to hate a thing, you get excited about hating the thing before you even engage with it, before you've even seen it or heard it. And so even after you've taken the thing in, you can't even change your mind. You can't pre-program yourself to think differently about it because you're so stuck on that thing, stuck on the joy of hating the thing, and also of rallying around with other people to hate the thing. That's a big part of our culture, y'all. That's a big part of social media culture. And I say this as somebody who does it. I'm trying to be more malleable. I want to give artists the benefit of the doubt. It's exciting to anticipate hating a thing, a movie, a TV show, an album. And when you hate it, you feel validated. But that's bad. It's bad for culture. It's bad for artists. It's especially bad for Black artists. And then what we're not even thinking about is we're doing all of this deconstruction just to potentially be wrong in the long run. How are these ideas gonna hold up in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Critics get it wrong all the time, but like, we're just not taking these things into consideration. But let's dive into the race stuff here, because I guess I do understand why people are so immediately leery of a white man writing and directing a movie about Black people that's talking so much about race. So what I'm seeing is when people say this feels inauthentic, what they mean is, I don't like who made this. And you know what? That's fine. That's fair. We need more Black art, period. Give Black people space and time and resources to tell whatever stories we want. But I do wish people would express that desire differently, because the authenticity claim just doesn't hold up for me. It relies on the idea that there is an essential Black viewpoint that would automatically lead us to a fundamentally different product here. And I'm just not sure about that. By now we know that just because a Black person made it doesn't mean it's automatically going to appeal to us or cater to our sensibilities. And then when y'all don't like something the way that y'all don't like Quinn and Slim, y'all yell, white gays, white gays, white gays, when in reality, Black people just have different tastes. Black people make bad art and weird art and problematic art and brilliant art all the time. This desire for a singular, authentic Black viewpoint comes from a place of lack, because we are not singular. We are multitudinous. We all share similar experiences of oppression, but we don't interpret those experiences the same. So the art that comes out of the Black experience is gonna be so different. It's gonna be so vast, and we're all gonna hate a lot of it, okay? I hate a lot of it, and that's fine. And you know what? I don't even know if Malcolm and Marie counts as a Black movie, and I don't even really wanna get into that debate, but what I do know is coming away from a film and saying, that film does not represent my experience, so it's not good, is bad. I hope we can get away from that soon, because then we miss the forest for the trees. The problem with Malcolm and Marie was not the race stuff. It's how the package was assembled. Relinquish the expectation that Black films or films with Black people in them will be perfectly legible representations of your Black life. That's an impossible standard. And then we get into the conversation about Black trauma. I don't want any more Black trauma. There's too much Black trauma. Okay. We get it. But oftentimes what people are calling Black trauma is just the kind of conflict that is essential to most storytelling. Anyways, back to the point. I don't have a problem with white people writing black characters as long as those black characters are not gross misrepresentations, like what Catherine Stockett and Taylor Hackford did with The Help. It was disgusting and disgraceful. It was so bad that since Viola Davis has gone back and been like, oh, I should not have done that movie, my bad. And I appreciate that. Okay, and back to the realism thing, because this really bothers me. I've seen so many people say about this movie, this doesn't feel real, this is not realistic. It's a movie! What are y'all expecting? It is not unreasonable to expect people to approach a film or a TV show or a play or any kind of production and expect a sense of heightened reality to suspend disbelief. I don't sit down and watch The Wiz and say, scarecrows don't dance. I've never seen that. I don't watch Othello and say, I don't speak in iambic pentameter. Like, what are y'all talking about? And I've seen Sam Levinson even say that he avoids realism on purpose. That is not his thing. I just feel like if y'all want to see regular arguments with regular dialogue, turn on Bravo. And then can I also say that it's not a filmmaker's job to make you feel good at the end of a movie. I've said before that people are expecting art to do things that only therapy can do, that only public policy can do, and we really need to reckon with that. Finally, a film being different from what you expected is not a tragedy. It's not a personal attack. That just means that a 2-minute trailer is not enough to explore the contours of every plot point. It's fine. You're fine. All right, y'all, let's wrap it up. I do think we need to be more gracious with artists, especially those who are trying hard, not with people who are making obviously cheap trash. Tyler Perry. It's fine to drag those people. But when people are really putting their all into making something, I'm okay with giving them a little bit more leeway. And I really hate that this film was so mediocre. I feel like it had the potential to be so much more if it had more time, more rounds of revision. Maybe more notes were needed. I heard Zendaya say in an interview that because they made this film independently, there were no studio notes. Maybe you needed some notes. Just maybe. It was just so constrained. And that's the other thing about the pandemic. I made a video about how much I love Chloe and Halle and how they have flourished in the pandemic, how their artistry has exploded. Everybody's not going to be able to do that. And that is not what happened here. I just feel like if you're looking for an exceptional film about a toxic and dysfunctional couple, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is that girl. I saw it mentioned in review after review and I'd never seen it before, so I went back and watched it before making this video. Y'all, it is exceptional. It's Mike Nichols' first film. Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton were just at the height of their superpowers. And there are a couple of clear Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf allusions in Malcolm and Marie, especially when it comes to the kind of vaguely horror feel of the movie sometimes. Absolutely. It couldn't quite get there. This film was supposed to be about a deliciously chaotic relationship, but it was all chaos and no delight. And it's just not fun to watch. I think that they can do better next time, but it felt like a film made out of obligation, which if you read the backstory, it kind of was, and it shows. But whatever, everybody involved in this can do better. Sam Levinson, looking forward to the next full season of Euphoria. Zendaya is a good actress. I'll watch what she's in. John David Washington is fine, so I'll be where he is. That's all I got, you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. Leave a comment down below. Again, shout out to the patrons. Shout out to the members. Looking forward to hanging out with y'all. Hey, y'all. Sign up for the email newsletter. Buy some merch in the merch bar down below. I will see you guys next time. Bye.